welcome to We're Not Wizards. We are the best, but not wizards. Enjoy the show!
Welcome to another episode of We're Not Wizards. My name's Richard. I'll be your host for, we're going to say March, April. It's kind of like, okay, look, it's the 29th of March, okay? And the person I'm speaking to, you could call them a repeat offender, because not because they're offensive, but because they're back on again. And I just realised that the last time I spoke to this person was, as we said, was back in 2019, January 2019. So it was before everything kind of got kind of interesting and different. You could say since then there was a lot of things brewing at the time in the background that this person couldn't talk about, and since then they have gone on to form their own company. They have successfully brought a game to Kickstarter. You could say it was maybe a bit of a keystone to their success. And now that they've done that and they've seen what the wildlife's out there and like, they're going to take their trip out their back door into their wild gardens. So joining me with his flowery gloves or their rose gauntlet, as you would say. I've got the wonderful Isaac Vega. Hello!
Oh, well, thank you so much for that introduction.
I've been pacing up and down in front of when I was out with the dog, saying, how can I intro? Where'd you start? How'd you start an intro like this? And I've already kind of proffered Isaac with embarrassment by kind of like going, oh look, I've got Ashes, and it's not just Ashes, it's Ashes Reborn, it's the whole thing inside that box, and also got and City of Remnants, which is obviously a blast from the past. So those that's what I was doing first of all. But secondly, what an amazing couple of years you had.
Oh yeah.
I mean, let as we say in these things, what we do is we like to have a little kind of look back, I guess, at the kind of the plaid hat of the past before we step into the Rose Gauntlet of the present and potentially the wild gardens of the future. First of all, what made you decide to jump ahead and go and form Rose Gauntlet? Because I think I remember at the time there was a situation where Plaid Hat got bought out, and then the company got gutted a bit, and there was people that kind of left and stayed and didn't go. And was that the kind of the catalyst that kind of spurred you on to say, right, I'm going to do my own thing now. This is going to happen.
Yeah. So I had been working with Plaid Hat for almost 10 years of my life. By that point, loved the team, loved working with them, but I had kind of gotten a little weary of like the entire corporatization, because we had gotten bought multiple times of everything, and I just wanted to kind of have a little bit more freedom.
Yeah.
And when Colby came to me and let me know that like he had the opportunity to buy back Plaid Hat Games from Asmodee and become independent again, I thought it was a good opportunity to go ahead and step away and step in my own direction and see if there was a different path for me to start growing through. I really loved the team at Plaid Hat, but I wanted to experiment with something new, wanted to try something fresh, and I thought it was a good time to go ahead and go in my own direction. So I didn't know exactly what that was going to look like when I started. Luckily, 2020 started off the year with a lot of extra time for everybody to think. And by mid-summer of 2020, I called up my good friend Lindsay, who I'd been wanting to work with for a very long time.
Yeah.
And we discussed the foundation of what would eventually become Rose Gauntlet. And we formed the company in September and announced in early 2021.
Was it? Was there a bit of kind of a bit of trepidation about kind of starting off? I mean, even though you're successful, there must be a little bit of you kind of like, because I know there's kind of like imposter syndrome. It's like, I know I'm good. I've designed all these games. People say they love my games. People say my games are brilliant. I'm going to go by myself.
I'm sure everybody can agree that anybody thinking that the perfect time to start a company is in the year 2020 in our universe is probably not going to think that was such a great idea. So there was a lot of concerns about that. Like we had no idea what the state of the industry would look like through the course of handling the ups and downs of the pandemic. There's so many things that we're still dealing with the wake of that. So that was a huge concern, number one. Number two was, I was at Plaid Hat and with Asmodee and things with a huge system in place, right?
Yeah.
I had the opportunity to be a designer, have an entire art team at my call, have graphic designers at my call, have people around me to test and play and give me feedback as much as possible. And with Lindsay and I transitioning over to Rose Gauntlet, it was just me and her to start off with, right? Of course, we've developed our team since then, and we've brought on contractors and different people that have definitely cheerleaded us along the way.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a different system that you're stepping out of and then stepping into, completely creating everything from scratch. And then there's the entire aspect of like, now you're not just a designer, you're not just a VP, you're the head of the company. You're trying to figure out how everything is going to move forward.
Yeah.
You're trying to figure out how all the entire side of the business world works and figuring out all the different ins and outs of running a business, which is, scary, but also like very exciting to me, because like that was part of the reason that I left, is that I wanted a new challenge. I wanted another stepping stone to kind of just like improve myself in my career. So I was like both scared, but both very excited. And I had done a lot of preparing to get to this point, and I had saved up and I had known more or less what cost and what investment would be making into the company. So we were definitely a lot more prepared than most, but because it was such a scary time and so many things were changing, it was, of course, very nerve-wracking as well. And me and Lindsay we still both work in two different states in the United States. She's in Michigan, I'm in Texas. So we're both working remotely. We had an entire year where we didn't even see each other since we formed the company. So there was that too, where it's just like, we're like, we don't have the opportunity to even see each other or hang out or be able to kind of do those things. We did everything remotely and online, which has been great. It's been a great learning process, but it's never been the way that I'd worked before either. Yeah. So that was interesting transition too.
It must be different to be involved in a company where you've actually got the face-to-face element, especially in a creative thing. And I know that people say that, and I work kind of online for my job. I've never gone back to the office since like March 2020. I kind of basically, and my lovely boss kind of turned around and says, we kind of don't need to, but there's still now clients kind of sneaking in that are going, kind of wouldn't mind a kind of a face-to-face meeting. And there's part of me that's like, I don't want to be near you. And then there's part of me that goes, well, actually sometimes in a creative aspect, I can imagine you sitting down with, like, especially in a board game design environment where it's tactile and you've kind of got marker and placement cards and you've got meeples here, there and everywhere, that sometimes you just need, you want to be able to reach across the table and just say, well, how about we do 3 cards instead of 4 and just see what that kind of looks like. And I know you can kind of simulate it and kind of like all these simulation tabletop, whatever kind of programs, but I can imagine actually there's something quite lovely about physically seeing a board game that you're designing or co-designing kind of coming together.
Yeah, I had never utilized any of the digital platforms for testing prior to this, prior to starting Rose Gauntlet. So we started off with Tabletop Simulator, transitioned over to Tabletopia, and that's also like, hey, we're presenting our game in a format that we don't ever intend to release it. Yeah. So So that also creates its own issues, and like trying to make sure that like people understand the program and how to use it and all that kind of things. So like I still prefer physical playtesting more than anything else, and that was definitely something that I really missed during that time period. We still offer physical prototyping for our playtesters. But it's most of them take advantage of the digital format, especially with our games that have a lot of cards and different moving parts. So it's useful in some ways and saves people time in some ways, but in other ways it's a entire other process that I again wasn't used to, and it was so much easier to be able to go right next door to the office and like be able to say, hey, all right, I'm going to change these cards. I'm going to write this in there on the fly, instead of now the process is, okay, I made the changes. Let me submit it to the person that's going to upload it into the digital format and then wait a week to make all that work.
Exactly. And I have kind of done preview pieces I've played kind of versions of games on I think it was maybe Tabletop Simulator, and everything kind of looks polished and everything like that, but you can't say, well, this is how the game's kind of gonna play. There's something, I think it's different if like, say I've played like, say, online, been on BGA, and a lot of people have been on BGA and played a lot of games on BGA, and there's also the apps. I mean, if you play any like Root and stuff like that, but I think the difference with playing something like Root is it's more of it's a gamified event as opposed to like a simulation. And so, and I see it more and more in kind of like reviewers groups on Facebook, where somebody says, we're looking for people to kind of write previews or preview our game for Kickstarter. We're going to be running TTS sessions or Tabletopia sessions, and people kind of aren't that interested in it. And I think it was because, and there was part of me that's thinking, that's because people kind of like would prefer to have physical copies so they can have a physical copy.
Right.
But it is also so people can kind of have a physical copy, because there's some games like, and an example, your own game, Keystone. I mean, when you get that, when that was sitting in front of me, and there was like the mat, and there was all the cards, and you kind of get to really, you can't really get close up and appreciate the kind of the art and the work that's gone into the different components, I think, in an electric version. In an electric version, here I am, Scottish, surrounded by candles. There's the moon. But you know what I mean? I'm such a Luddite that I guess I still associate board games very much with a kind of a tactile situation where I've got my hands on some kind of components, which it's just, I guess that's just myself.
Well, I think that's why board games still have their place in the market in this world, where there are amazing digital games. Like there are plenty of different avenues to take there, but the tactile beauty of being able to play these games at your table, being able to sit across other people and enjoy it with them, like we're not like nothing in the digital realm can take that away from us, right? And that's why I think board games are so special, because they exist in the physical space, and there are these things that you can play and touch and look at and enjoy, and so like it's part of the entire process. So that's why testing physically is so nice and sought after, and being able as a designer to just like get stuff to the page and get stuff to the table and see people's reactions right there in real life is fantastic, and it's really helps being able to improve upon the game as well.
I have a question in relation to Rose Gauntlet itself, which is, how many names did you go through before you decided on that?
Oh my gosh, it feels like at least 100.
See, I was wanting to say something like, I just went outside and I was in my friend's garden, and a rose fell down and it landed and I picked it up and I had gloves on and I just went, well, here we go. But
No, not at all. Like we had so many different ideas for the name, but we always knew that we wanted to invoke something that had a sense of magic to it, a sense of fantasy, but also had a sense of inviting people in, had a sense of like softness and warmth as well. And and that's why we landed on Rose Gauntlet. We felt like the rose aspect was, growing, but inviting and kinds, but the gauntlet was still magical and fantastical, but also defensive and outspoken in the industry. You know what I mean? So like we kind of brought those two aspects together and really felt that it represented who we wanted to be as a company.
No, absolutely. I mean, you've always come across as a kind of I'd say a very kind of strong-minded soul, but also every interaction I've had with you, I've always walked away going, such a nice, decent man. Such a lovely, you know what I mean? So when I see that, I say like, okay, you've got the strength of the gauntlet, but you've also got the kind of the rose, so it's like associates a kind of like almost like a delicacy or a softness. The actual petals of the rose itself. People spread rose petals about when they're kind of they're wanting to show an appreciation as well. What about the color scheme? Because when I saw that, I went, the kind of light kind of turquoise baby blue. Did you go through that again? Was that another kind of?
We had our graphic designer at the time present us, I believe, with I think they presented us with 25 different color concepts, and we actually didn't like most of them, and then had them combine two that we thought were really good, and that's how it came all together. So we really loved that. It just was a striking pose. Again, our striking color scheme, and it really kind of again evoked the same kind of feelings, but also gave it some sort of separation from all the different logos that exist in the industry. There's so many reds and greens that are in tabletop as far as when it comes to logos, or just straight up black. So we wanted to also have something that stood out a little bit too.
Yeah, no, it just pops, and you immediately, it just, I could recognize it. And you're right, it's like the mixture of the two mixtures of the color. It's not something that I've seen in a combination kind of before. In terms of then, so you then went and you kind of design Keystone. Now, in terms of the chronology of the design, was Keystone always there? Was it the first one that you made, or was it a case that you had kind of Wild Garden sitting there, you had kind of Keystone there, and Keystone was just the one that was kind of like the most ready to kind of take to kind of Kickstarter at the time?
So actually, we didn't start the company with the intention of releasing Keystone first. Keystone was a project that was brought to us by Jeff Joyce, the co-designer on the game. And he had been working on it throughout, I believe, for about a year prior. And I had been giving him some consultation during the summer before we even started the company, and just helping out a friend and things like that. And then the more and more that I played it, the more I thought it could be a good fit for what we wanted to accomplish with the games that we were releasing through our company. I presented the game over to Lindsay. We discussed in ways on how to improve it, how to change it. And that's when I came on as a co-designer in order to help make some changes faster. And it just got to a place where we were all really happy with it, and then decided that it should be the first launch of our company.
And when you went and announced, the game, and you announced kind of Rose Gauntlet, were you expecting the kind of level of support and kind of positivity that surrounded it? Because I remember you guys announcing it. I remember you and Lindsay announcing the company, and I just remember kind of going, okay, everybody's talking about this. Is going to be. Was it nice to kind of go, oh, actually, this is, was it a bit overwhelming to kind of?
Yeah, we announced it in January of 2021, and we expected to, we've been working in the industry for a little while, so of course we expected some of our friends to be on the bandwagon and to be supporting us, but we did not expect the level of intense fervor for our company, the amount of people that we got signing up for our social media things. And people just super excited about seeing us both working together and both working on something new. I think we were also very strategic with our launch, letting people know that, like, hey, we're not just another game company. We're coming in here as we call it Rose Gauntlet Entertainment for a reason. We have other things in mind for the future. Like we announced originally 3 games. We announced Keystone, we announced Life After Dungeon, which is sitting more in the RPG side of the industry, and we announced Gone to Gaia, which is a video game that we're hoping to release as well. So these are all things that we, dream to put together. They're all things that are still taking place and worked on in the background. Each just allow for a different level of time and development. And since we are a 2-person team, there is quite a small amount of time that we can, devote to every single one of those projects. But they're all moving forward, and we're all really excited to get them out there as quickly as we can. Keystone obviously was the most ready, was the first one, and that was within the medium that we're the most experienced within. Board games. But our next project after Wild Gardens is full force Life After Dungeon, which we have so many things already moving forward on, and we're so excited about. But we're hopefully announcing that one either later this year with some more information later this year or early next year. And with Gone to Gaia, that's still development in the background, but it's also us learning a whole bunch of stuff about the video game industry and learning all the different things that we have to do there. But the reason that we called it Rose Gauntlet Entertainment is because we wanted the company to grow with us, and we wanted it to be able to sit within the areas of entertainment that we're excited to pursue and excited to be as a company. And we don't just want to grow in the direction of just tabletop games. What we want to do is be able to show that tabletop games are avenues to all these different ways of enjoying different ways to spend time with people. And our big thing is about how can we develop community, how can we engage with our community, and how can our community enjoy all these different ways to connect with other human beings.
Has running the company, has that taken away your time from not only just designing, but actually more like the playing? Are you still making sure that you're kind of taking time out to go ahead and spend a couple of hours just enjoying a board game without having to think about the design aspect or the money side of things or promoting side?
I think the pandemic took that away from me more than anything. Early on, it's definitely been like I've been rebuilding that at home as much as possible. To play more games. So I can't really say I've like had more or less of a normal cadence because I've worked in games so long. Like there are times of working at a games company where I don't want to look at a board game when I'm done with work. I'm just done. And there are times when I just want to play everything because I'm trying to solve something or I'm just inspired by how many amazing things that are coming out in the industry. So there's times where I play a ton and times when I play a lot. Right now, I haven't played too much because like I'm finishing up Wild Gardens, which is always the hardest part of a project for me because I see the finish line, but then there's all these little things to check off. So that like makes me hyper focused on like the work side of things. But then as far as like the business side of things, honestly, there's been so many cool things that we've learned, so many interesting decisions that we're making that it kind of feels like a game within itself. But and it's just like playing around with that and trying to figure different things out and different ways to make the company work. And the fact that I have Lindsay, and it's not just like me, we're co-owners, right? It really gives us an opportunity to kind of just bounce off of each other. And then there's other new opportunities. Like I said, we're exploring new things. So we've been playing a lot of new RPGs as of late, just to kind of get in the mode of being able to have a really clear understanding of the different directions we want to take Life After Dungeon in. And that hasn't necessarily been the case in my past. Like I dabbled a little bit in RPGs here and there, but I hadn't been like fully immersed like in playing a whole bunch of stuff or being part of an active regular group. And that's something that I'm really excited that we've been doing as of late. So I feel like my gaming, if anything, has stayed pretty consistent or increased at certain points. Especially because I can completely control my own time now.
Yeah,
As an
exactly.
owner, right? I'm not necessarily expected to clock in
Yeah,
at a specific time and clock out a specific time.
yeah,
So I have more opportunities to kind of say, you know what, today I'm going to be exploring and researching a whole bunch of new stuff,
mm.
or I'm going to go meet with a friend and be able to do some gaming with them because they're available right now. And
Yeah,
sometimes I didn't really have that freedom
yeah,
beforehand. I worked with Plaid Hat and I worked at Asmodee, which are amazing companies to work with and
yes,
like very, very flexible, but they still have a certain level of expectation
yes.
of being there and clocking in and clocking out at a certain time. So I was definitely had more flexibility than most people, but
Mm.
sometimes just the way that my brain works and how I function, I think it's better for me to have a more freeform schedule that I can go ahead and control and manipulate as I see fit.
Has there been a change in the dynamic of the friendship? Have you had to learn when you're when you're making business decisions to kind of be more stricter with each other in terms of saying, right, we need to do this and get it done? Because I know that the big thing about friends working together is that it can end up becoming the biggest laugh right up until somebody forgets we've got a pile of bills we should have pressed a button and paid. So have you kind of said, right, have you kind of went, right, we're going to kind of almost like ring fence where the friendship is so that we can still concentrate on the business enough so it doesn't affect either kind of side of it?
So luckily, Lindsay and I have both worked in situations where we worked with friends before. Obviously, I was really friendly with a lot of people at Plaid Hat Games and really enjoyed working there, and got really close to many of them. But like having known that and having experienced that, we pretty much laid down some pretty good ground rules at the beginning of the company and really understood that like, hey, our friendship is first. Number one, we don't want to have this damage our friendship in any way.
Yeah.
If anything, we want it to increase our friendship and increase our closeness. And in all aspects, to be completely honest, it has. We communicate better than we ever have before. We're spending more time with each other than we ever have before. We've grown to love each other and respect each other and see each other grow than we ever had before.
Yeah.
So in all of those things, it is fantastic. Whenever we have an issue or anything, what's lucky with us is that we have a very strict schedule of meeting up once a week and discussing any issues that came up during the week previously.
Yeah.
So we're able to kind of go through all those things like, oh, we're behind on this. We're able to do this. Okay, here's your assignment. Here's my assignment. Here's somebody else's assignment. And here are the things that we need to get done and prioritize. And then we also meet once a quarter to also discuss everything we want to accomplish during that quarter. So every week kind of keeps us in line to making sure that we're having those goals of the quarter being accomplished.
Yeah.
And that really helps alleviate all tensions. And if there's ever things that aren't completed and not gotten to, we have a really clear understanding as to why that happens or what reasons or things came up on the way, because we're so good at communicating on a consistent basis. I think what develops a lot of problems sometimes when you really don't have a clear understanding of what the other person is doing or what's going on and why certain things aren't being accomplished, and when you don't have a clear understanding of what needs to be accomplished. And when those things kind of fall apart, that's when you have tension. But luckily, we've done a very good job of avoiding that. And whenever there are things that come up in the business or they're at a level of frustration, I'm just like, take a break. You need a break.
Yeah.
Everybody needs a break.
Yeah.
Part of the reason that we wanted to do this company as well is because we wanted to live lives that we had more control over. So being able to take time away from the work or being able to take away time from the business in order to work on our mental health or our health or other family things that come up, just all these other things that kind of take place. If we're not making space for that, if our business isn't making space for that, then we have a problem with the structure of a business. So that's what we've always tried to keep in mind first, is to make sure that we start. The reason that we started this business is because we didn't want to have the same issues that we had previously. We wanted to be able to have more of a sense of freedom and more of an ability to be able to grow with each other and grow our friendship better as well. So we've done a really good job of that so far. Hopefully that stays that way and continues getting better and better through time.
Yeah. You're bringing kind of wild gardens, and we will, I promise you, we will talk about wild. But I mean, as I say, I could talk to you probably for the next 3 hours and still not run out of things to say. What made you decide to switch over to Backerkit for the campaign for Wild Garden? I know there's obvious ones like Kickstarter just continually pooing the bed at the moment. It's like,
a lot of those things are already self-evident online, I'm sure.
Yeah.
One of the biggest reasons for us is that we took some time at the most recent Gen Con that we were attending to meet with all of the different crowdfunding platforms.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have a clear understanding of like, what are some of the pros and cons of working with you? Why would we choose one over the other? Because like everything was kind of disrupted when Backerkit first announced this past summer, or like so it wasn't even that long ago when they announced. And so many people that we respected in the industry were also jumping over to Backerkit.
Yeah.
So we wanted to, number one, find out the reason why. We, number two, wanted to see what the team was like and understand them a little bit better. But it was really just having an understanding of like, they are going to do an excellent job of being our cheerleaders along the way.
Yeah.
They have done that. They have been continuously updating us. They have reserved resources for us. And that's just a completely different experience than we had with Kickstarter, right? It's not like their team was particularly problematic. It's just that their team is really stretched out and they have a lot of, they have a lot of different clients, and they just don't have the hand holding or ability to kind of give us the information that we're looking for on a consistent basis like Backerkit was.
I think they come from the kind of the same kind of wheelhouse as like, say, your Patreon and your Twitch of this world, which is Kickstarter has always been quite happy to kind of be hands off and take the money. But never seem to be kind of only really introducing kind of additional infrastructure when other people are kind of introducing the infrastructure. Yeah. And there seems to be a collection. It's like the same with like, say, Twitch, that again, quite happy to take the money, not that great in kind of supporting the people that use it. And also, I mean, the big one is obviously Patreon, which is happy to take people's money as well who are trying to drum up money to live on. But again, it's kind of like it only seems when it's a last desperate kind of point where they'll kind of change the infrastructure. And I continue to see people saying that there's still the ongoing issues with kind of Kickstarter in my mind with regards to kind of like its whole still blockchain technology and stuff like that. But I think it's like one of these things that's like, it's so big and it's kind of so well established. It's almost like the whole Twitter Mastodon kind of situation where where people are kind of like, I'm going to jump onto Mastodon, and they get there and they're kind of like, I'm not sure how to get the best out of this platform. And also there's still quite a few people that I know that are still using this other service. So I've seen, but I think in the terms of crowdfunding, I think we do need somebody different. We do need somebody especially when things kind of potentially go wrong, that there's a support structure there, that, the companies like GameFound and Backerkit and the others will reach out to the companies that are using their platform and say, well, what's kind of going on here? How can we help, kind of thing, as opposed to Kickstarter, which is like, well, you tick the box to say that, you agree that it's just, you might lose your money kind of thing, which I think is a bit kind of, it's very capitalist, Isaac. it's very capitalist.
Capitalism aside, which will do its thing no matter what platform we use. Backerkit just overall, the biggest thing for us is that Backerkit was doing a lot of things right. Yeah. We heard a lot of great things about working with Backerkit. Yeah. We now, having experienced and launched a thing on Backerkit, we still are having a great experience. Yeah. And luckily, a lot of our friends in the industry suggested them highly. And because they're jumping on doing something new, and we're we're still somewhat new. It was a perfect opportunity to take a chance, right? And it hopefully we will both grow alongside each other and make each other better along the way. And we just didn't have that opportunity with Kickstarter. So it's a perfect time to make a change. It's completely possible that our projects would do just as well or better on a different platform. But right now we're really happy with utilizing Backerkit. And unless we have a reason to change that up or change again, I think we'll stick with them for quite some time.
Yeah. I mean, this whole talk about money and stuff's getting a bit stuffy in here, so let's take a walk outside into the wild gardens. Segues. The segue of life. So, I don't know where I'm going with this. I'm reaching out in the dark. It's getting, you can see, it's like as we've been talking, Isaac's not got his camera on. I have got my camera on, and when I started, it was still, we've kind of, our clocks have changed recently, so it's been lighter outside, but now it's like I'm slowly kind of sinking into the inky black darkness of Scottish nighttime. Talk to me about Wild Gardens. Tell me what it is. Everything. I want to know it all.
So Wild Gardens is our latest game that we just launched a Backerkit as of March 29th. It's been out for almost a week. It'll be up until April 19th, I believe is the date, if I'm remembering correctly. It is a game for 1 to 4 players. It's a strategic game in which you're trying to collect the most victory points in order to win. You are taking on the role of a forager, and you're foraging different ingredients along the path in order to create these wonderful recipes. And then you're utilizing those recipes to then serve to interesting guests that you meet along the way. You're going to be able to score victory points in the traditional way, where you get victory points from your recipes, you get victory points from your guests, but guests can also have ways of getting you victory points at the end of the game. There's also an interesting jar mechanic, another way to score victory points on the victory point track as well, that you can go ahead and utilize. And then all of the different guests have unique abilities when you bring them into play that can work into your strategy in cool ways. There is a solo mode as well in the game that will take you through different stories of the guest. All of the different guests in the game have little speech bubbles that you can read in story mode or in solo mode. And they will give you little glimpses into who they are as people. They're going to help you on the way or hinder you on the way. And it's all to kind of build the world of Wild Gardens and understand a little bit more about the wonders of foraging and why it can be such a unifying and interesting hobby, just like how the tabletop industry is. Wild Gardens was really inspired from my time of isolation during COVID. I ended up watching a lot of different creators who were foraging, who were taking care of plants, who were cooking on TikTok and different social media platforms, and they just gave me so much hope and kindness and joy during that period of time that I wanted to create a game that really reflected that and shared more about the world of foraging and the world of cooking and how that can be unifying for people. So that's where Wild Gardens was born. And if people are interested, it's now on Backerkit.
I have a second screen. Because you're like going, why is he looking over there? Because I have a second screen and I'm scrolling through the kind of the pictures. And it's like, it's almost like the artwork's just like, could we have more colours? Well, we could. Can we have even more colours? There's kind of colours here I didn't know it kind of existed. See, that was the thing. With Keystone. Keystone was kind of like, and I think I maybe said this on the review that I originally said, it was literally like somebody who'd worked at the Skittles company just walked in and went, taste this rainbow, and just went, and it's the same on this, except I'm actually looking at the kind of the black walnut pie, the sea moss smoothie, and there's going to be saliva. It's not going to be a good look. It's not going to be a good look.
We were very inspired by Studio Ghibli and anime food. They do an amazing job of just making meals look incredibly appetizing, and we wanted to make sure that was the case in our game as well. So our artist Liz Minold did a fantastic job bringing that to life.
Absolutely.
And we are so happy with those pieces.
What I found with Keystone was that while it was like presented absolutely beautifully, there was still a lot of what I call thinkage, which is a word I've invented. But there was a lot of thinkage going on, as in you still had to be planning your moves. You still had to be, because things kind of cascaded when it got to kind of like different environments and the animals and the habitats and obviously the keystone creatures themselves. With the kind of the designs that you've had in the past, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're not like an entry level kind of casual game person. So looking at kind of like, I'm just looking at some of the cards with the mechanics. Is this a fairly kind of medium to almost kind of, light heavy type game with the amount that's kind of going on?
I would say it's medium, maybe a little bit light heavy for some folks. Type of game, because it's really simple mechanics. You're going to be utilizing your action tokens each turn to move your character around the board, but that action token will also trigger one of the 3 different sections of your player board that will allow you to either forage, cook, serve, or reserve, or study, which lets you all of those abilities become more powerful. So you can actually go to the library and gain additional skills as well. So it's a really cool way of kind of like easing people into the gameplay. So it's like you're going to do something pretty simple. Just go ahead and do this one thing, and you're going to be able to build upon that after each turn over and over again. Yeah.
I mean, I don't mean to go back to your previous work, but I mean, something like Ashes was a game. It's like, yes, you play a card or you get a conjuration or you take an action, but it was just like the simple case of you can do this type of action or you can do this kind of action, and then the whole different kind of permutations across the kind of the different characters, and no 2 characters were like exactly the same. That's why it remains one of my kind of favorite games ever. And I'm kind of getting this, I've said it all, it's like I've literally write about it. Okay, look, I'm going to show you something, right? Tabletop Gaming Magazine, which is going to be coming out very, very soon, okay? I do, and I'm self-plugging it, right? And I'm just going to put the light on, and I'm just going to show you, right, that I write an article about online rule books, and I directly reference Ashes Reborn, and if you look in the centre of the article, I don't know if you can see that. Do you see that?
Amazing.
Do you see that?
I love it.
There's a big picture of Ashes Reborn right in the middle of the article because I directly reference it. So I'm a big fan.
Well, you've proven it. Now you've proven that it's
what I mean.
Favorite
Fanboy. It's like I'd be asking for selfies. But anyway, so this kind of thing, I'm kind of looking at this and going, there's going to be some crunch in here, and there's going to be just enough crunch to keep people interested, and also
for me, with my designs, I really enjoy that level of simplicity, like getting people into the gameplay and understanding the game as quickly as possible, and really letting the theme marry that gameplay as well, so people have a clear understanding of how that all works together, but also then layering in some very interesting decisions along the way. I want players to feel like they have a lot of different avenues to explore, and that they can go ahead and try some different strategies in order to try to gain victory, which I really enjoy. And like with these last 2 games with Keystone and now with Wild Gardens, I've also been really enjoying the ways to kind of structure solo play, and having solo play not be too much of a deviation away from the standard gameplay, but having it be an opportunity for you to start telling a story to the players and having them connect a little bit more with the characters in the world that you've created in these games as well.
Now, one of the things with Keystone is it worked pretty well at a kind of a 2-player. So have you kind of like, when you've been designing it and looking at it, have you thought of kind of like an optimum kind of player count that you've been designing around, or have you just kind of like, well, it's going to play pretty well regardless if it's just 2 people sitting down, or kind of like if you get like 4 or 5 people?
I like to stick, especially in recent days, with my design. I like to stick between 1 and 4 players. I think it's a good indicator of what's going to be available for most groups, and it also usually stays within the range of being able to be enjoyable at either player count.
Yeah.
Like, obviously there's some specifications and changes that need to be made when you're doing solo play, but between 2 to 4 players, if most games can handle that kind of level. My only exception, I would say, would be like in my history of what I've designed in the past is obviously Ashes. I think it's optimal at 2.
Yeah.
Even though it can play up to 4, optimal at 2. And with Forgotten Waters, we went all the way up to 7 players with that. And I think like it definitely has some really interesting dynamics when you get up to that level of group, because there's so many different things that can happen and cross opportunities to tell stories with the players at the table. So I think that's a really cool way of doing that too. But with Wild Gardens in specific, I don't think you're going to have too much of a difference as far as like the level of enjoyment that you're going to have between 2 to 4 players. I think all of them play within a good amount of time. You're going to get just as much crunchiness, and there's not too many different ways in which players are interacting or over interacting with each other. It really has a nice little balance of that. Mostly you can skip players. You'll be able to move a little bit further the more players that you have, because you skip over different pathways with players.
Okay.
But in 1 player also, then you get an entire story aspect. So there's an entire different experience there. So I think it does a really good job being able to balance that. I wouldn't want to necessarily take it any more than that. I think Wild Gardens could probably handle a 5th player. But anything further would be a little bit much. And I think that's where it belongs, 1 to 4.
So in terms of like the solo mode, and again I keep going back to Keystone, but it's the keystone of my entire argument. But the difference, because I've always prepared a rant for a solo mode, because sometimes our solo modes are just like, score some more points, go against yourself, on you go, son. Keystone, right? You had little books and stories, and it was almost like it was almost like a narration of the kind of this person kind of gaining experience in this kind of natural world. And for a solo mode, there's 2 things I usually expect in a solo mode. One of them is, and I've already said, is, get 60 points and be the top person, get 50 points and be the not so top person, get 30 points, hey, try again. Or you get like a David Turtsey kind of jam, which is David Turtsey's rulebook for solo play is usually about 3.5 times the size of the rulebook for the single player. He knows I've said this, by the way. He's not going to take this. He will take this the wrong way. But I haven't seen him for a long time, so I can probably get a good run on him if I saw him first. But with Keystone, it was this, and I'd advise people to have a look if you can, just to see the kind of how the solo mode worked. And I take it he's taking kind of pages out of that book when it comes to Wild Gardens. Then are you doing the same thing? It sounds like you are, with the story and the progression of the actual character.
Yeah, I think what's really cool is that, like, in Wild Gardens, it's kind of a marriage between what I've learned with the Crossroads style system of games and with what we did with Keystone. It's a way to like, yes, you're going to be in a similar way of Keystone. You're going to be going for different milestones and goals that you're trying to complete. But at the same time, you're also navigating through the story. And what's really cool is in this system, since all the characters have their own entries and all different directions that you can go in, you'll be going ahead and interacting with one character. That character might open up the opportunity for you to interact with 1 or 2 other characters, and their stories might branch into other characters' stories as well. So unlike with Keystone, that was a very structured, 1 page, like, this is the story that you're into, now play the game. In this one, you're going to be interrupted by different story beats while you're playing the game, and trying to make sure that you get through all those story beats before the end of the game as well.
That sounds like, it sounds like there's an awful lot of content here, but you're only, it's on Backerkit just now, and it's like a $50 kind of entry fee.
Yeah, it's honestly a really good deal.
That is a ridiculously.
The MSRP is actually going to be $70.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, for our backers, for the people that are supporting us early, this is definitely the time to get the game, because you're going to get the most bells and whistles for your buck. Later on it's going to be more expensive, unfortunately. There's a lot of different content in this game. There's 48 different unique guests, there's 48 different unique recipes, 12 different location cards. The location cards and all of the recipes are double-sided, so they all have different art pieces in the back as well, and different interactions in which they utilize. They change up the game in really interesting ways. And then all of the guests have these like really expansive story points in which you'll get to learn more about who they are and what they do and how they exist in the world of Wild Gardens.
So are you looking at, coming from Plaid Hat, obviously they were kind of very much into kind of like the online retail side of things afterwards. I mean, you could buy kind of pretty much most, if not all, of their catalogue whenever they're releasing product. With the likes of, say, Wild Gardens and also Keystone, is that going to be part of the kind of the Rose Gauntlet plan, that, you know, you're just not come and get it out crowdfunding or miss it forever? Are you is the aim to kind of have kind of additional printings and stuff like that as time goes on?
The ideal for any company is to have your product available to everyone all the time, always, whenever they want it. But that's not the reality of what can take place sometimes. The more support that we get on the Backerkit will allow us as a company to print additional products that then can be on the market and sold through distribution, and also sold through our personal website. The less that we get on Backerkit, the more conservative we have to be in production, and production's its own long process that can take anywhere between 6 months to 9 months to get, you know, from them receiving the files to us receiving it on our shores. So we'll only have so much product that we'll be able to print after the campaign, depending on how many orders we get on Backerkit, how many distributors want to carry the product, how much retailers want to carry the product. And then we'll go ahead and see how the market treats the game. Like, does it sell out immediately? Are we able to make enough funds to go ahead and go right back to production, or are we going to have to wait and take it slow? So that's just kind of reality of being in business and being in business in the tabletop industry, and seeing whether or not your game is something that's going to live long term, or did it just survive one print run? Is that all it's going to do? Or is it going to be something that people are going to be clamoring for a long time? I've had some games in my past that have only gone through one print run and are still selling out of that single print run. I've had some games in my past that sold out of their print run before it even arrived here, and have continuously been in print ever since. So it just depends on the product, and hopefully Wild Gardens is one that will stay in print for a very long time. I think it's a very special game, and I believe it will hit that milestone, but we'll see.
And I mean, at the moment, it is smashing the kind of the current milestone, because you're wanting, it was like $40,000, and you're like two and a half times that. So I mean, that must that must make you smile, at least.
Yes, we're very excited about this, and we're very excited to also keep, like, with Keystone being our first product, to be beating our first product so quickly. So that's amazing, and you know, it allows us to do a lot more things. It keeps opening doors. It lets us also fulfill on those promises of all those games that we announced when we first started up. It's just like, yes, now we can move on to the next step and start really giving all of this investment and love and attention to this product, because this product is doing well. Brilliant. So as long as we're able to continue building on that, Lindsay and I can continue growing the company. We can add other team members. We can continue printing the copies of the game, and we can continue building this community support that's going to allow us to keep living and enjoying our lives, and being able to make these amazing games and create all these products that we have sitting in our heads and want to put on paper.
And so if people have listened along and they are, I mean, itching to find out more, and to also to keep up with you guys in the future, where can we find you on the internet webs? Where do you exist?
Yeah, so if you're interested in Wild Gardens, definitely go to Backerkit. You'll find it under Wild Gardens. It's one of the first things on their creator page. If you're interested in finding out more about us, you can go to our website, www.rosegauntlet.com,
Yes.
or you can follow us on all our social media pretty much every social media platform. We are at Rose Gauntlet. So go ahead and find there. That was another great reason for the name that we chose. It wasn't taken by anybody else.
That is, I mean,
that helped a lot with everything else that was going on.
You're preaching to the choir here, because that's the only reason we are what we're called. You know, with this, you know, apart from the obvious mistake of not being able to put an apostrophe in every single bit of social media, but you know, maybe it is the fact that we were not wizards, but maybe we are now. But there you go. What we'll do is I will make sure that we put all of the links in the show notes so that we've got notes to show. If you want to keep an eye on what we're up to, then there's a couple of places you can find us. If you get the next issue or the issue coming out of Tabletop Gaming Magazine, I'm in there. I've written a couple of pieces. I'm I'm crowing like a rooster. One of them is me. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. One's an opinion piece of me being a grumpy old man shouting at a cloud, and the other one is an interview with a Mr. Jamie Stegmaier about his latest game, kind of Expeditions, coming out later this year. But you can also follow us on all the normal social media. If you go to search for We're Not Wizards, and you'll find us in all those magical places where all the wizards hang out at the Dumbledore Arms, etc., etc. I'm just embracing it now. I might as well. If you like what you've listened to tonight, there's a couple of things you can do. Tell other people that we exist. You know, if you know that somebody's a fan of Isaac's work, and everybody is, then invite them, get them to have a listen. If you yourself are a creator, designer, somebody involved in the board game space, and you are interested in podcasting, I have podcasted with lots of different people, some people who have never podcasted before, some people who have podcasted every night of their lives, then feel free to drop me a message and we can arrange to get you on. If you like what you've listened to tonight, please consider going to your podcast catcher of choice and give us a rating or a review. And as we say, it's been 7 years. You know, I've been doing this for 7 years. People say if I'd done shoplifting, I would have been out in 5. But if you are going to be giving us a rating or review, don't give us 10 stars because it makes us big-headed. But at the same time, don't give us 1 star because it makes us cry. Give us something in the middle, like a 5, because it's average, and we're just a little bit average. But the person who's not being average is the rather wonderful, the rather fantastic, is going to be gushing like an absolute stupid, giddy little fanboy. It is. I've literally got a box full of ashes right at my feet just now. It's the wonderful, fantastic Isaac Vega. Thank you very, very much for coming on again.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, it's just so good. There's only 2 more things to do. The first is to remember that we're many things, but we're not wizards. Are we wizards, Isaac?
You are not wizards.
There we go. It's like I don't care. If he said yes, it'd be fine. You know, if they said yeah, I'm a wizard, I'd be like, yeah, cool. Show me your hat. And the next thing is to say goodbye. So it's a goodbye from Isaac. Say goodbye, Isaac.
Goodbye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in.
And it's a goodbye from me. Remember, stay safe, roll 6s, make something awful, and look, it's March, it's almost April, it's getting warm outside. Take your jacket off, take your hat off, step out into those wild gardens and have yourself a fun time. But until the next time, goodbye.
Bye.
A wizard is never late. Nor is he early. He arrives precisely when he means to.